streaming on Facebook.
Okay, everybody. Okay, everybody, it's game time. This is what you've all been waiting for, the big event. Okay, again, my name is Share Music. This is Mindy Diepenbrock. We are just two of the many, many Indivisible Nova West volunteers who have worked super hard to put this event together. On behalf of all of us, we want to thank you for coming. This is an amazing turnout, way better than we expected, and we hope that this debate wows you and makes sure that you pick the candidate that you want. So we have a couple of thank yous before we get started. First, we want to thank Old Busthead. Thank you so much for hosting this tonight and allowing us to turn this brewery blue. Specifically, we'd like to thank Jen and Sean for your hard work. Thank you. Also, many thanks to the League of Women Voters, our League of Women Voters All-Stars, Carol Noggle and Barbara Amster. Thank you. They worked very, very hard vetting questions, coming up with a logical order, and making sure that all the issues that you want to hear about are represented tonight. Also, thank you to Dr. Stephen Farnsworth. He's right here. He's our distinguished moderator. If you don't know Dr. Farnsworth, you should. He's a professor of political science and international affairs and director of the Center for Leadership and Media Studies at the University of Mary Washington. Dr. Farnsworth is often quoted in the Washington Post. He's the author of many books. His most recent is Presidential Communication and Character, White House News Management from Clinton and Cable to Twitter and Trump. You should check it out. Thank you, Dr. Farnsworth, for volunteering your time. We appreciate your efforts. And thank you to all three candidates, John Siddharth, Vanjie Williams, and who's that? Oh, Edwin Santana. Thank you so much for having your time to come here. We really appreciate it. Just kidding. And on behalf of everyone in Indivisible Nova West, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time to listen tonight. Please silence your cell phones. Lastly, we want you to have all the information you need to make an educated choice at the primary on June 12th. So make sure you vote. Take it away, Dr. Farnsworth.
Thanks very much. And let's give a hand to the folks at Indivisible Nova West putting this together. They make it look very easy. Just a couple of quick rules so that everybody understands how we're going to do this. Each of the candidates will get a 3-minute opening statement, and we've drawn lots ahead of time to figure out who will go first. There will also be a 2-minute closing statement, and the candidates will speak in reverse order from the opening statements. The questions will be asked by me. The first person of the three who gets to answer first on that question has 2 minutes to answer, and then each of the other candidates has 1 minute. And we're going to have a number of questions divisible by 3 so that each candidate has an equal number of time to be a first respondent to the question. There is the option of a 30-second rebuttal if the first candidate wishes. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. We'll work it out as we go along. But you also have responsibilities here in the audience. We've collected some questions from you, and these will be part of the conversation as well. It's important to recognize that we need to give the candidates as much time as possible to be heard, and so we'll ask you not to applaud during individual responses. It may be a challenge for you to be behaved, but we'll hope for the best. I ask that you really don't applaud after a candidate, and we will deduct the time from that candidate who's covered by the support. So you will be hurting your candidate if you get all that demonstrative. We will allow a chance to recognize and thank everyone for being willing to do this, and that's right now. So thank these candidates for being willing to run for office. You won't be able to see it, but we do have lights here so that we have a sense of when people's time is up. We are going to run a little bit loosely here. We won't cut off microphones when the red light appears. You can finish the sentence and so on. Now, we'll be ready to go. The timers are ready. Thank you. Okay. So what we'll do now is we'll go through 3 minutes each for opening statements. And the order that we have for the opening statements is John Sudarth is first, Vanjie Williams is second, Edwin Santana is third. Before we start, would you all rather stay seated during the questions, or do you want to get up and down? Is there an agreement on that?
Probably just stand up for the opening statements. That works.
Is that all right with everybody? Yeah. Okay.
Would you like to stand up for closing? No, you don't.
You can stand up for closing statements too if you want. All right. So we're ready to go?
Yep.
Mr. Sudarth?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. It's great to be here. I'm John Sudarth. I'm a native of Prince William County. My father was from the hills of Tennessee, and he joined the Navy and became a hospital corpsman during World War II. My mother was the daughter of immigrants. She was the first woman from the Bronx to sign up for the Marine Corps in 1942. They met in the military, and they had eventually 5 children. They moved to Prince William County in 1955, and I was born 4 years later at Quantico Naval Hospital. My father retired from the Navy in 1966 and became a prison guard. My mother was a Prince William County school bus driver, a job that she loved because it enabled her to be at home with us kids when we weren't in school. In 1968, my father died in a car accident, and he was buried at Arlington with military honors. And for a 9-year-old boy who had just lost his father, that meant a lot. 3 weeks later, my mother sat on the couch, surrounded by her 5 kids, holding a letter from the Department of the Navy informing us that because he had opted for higher retirement pay, as long as he was alive, we would get nothing as his survivors. And my mother cried and wailed, "What are we going to do? How are we going to get by?" And that was 50 years ago, and as you may know, we got by just fine. We got Social Security survivors benefits. We all got a great education in Prince William County schools. We had dedicated teachers. I still remember all of their names. We were also active in Scouts and had great volunteer Scoutmasters. And at Christmas, we'd get a community basket with a turkey. My sisters all went to college with government loans. I went to West Point and became a field artillery officer. And then later I went to Stanford and I got my master's degree on the GI Bill and more student loans, all of which have been long paid back. Now, were I a Republican, I would say that I was a self-made man. And I might even believe it. Hillary Clinton said it takes a village, and the Republicans mocked her. But I know that I'm the product of a loving family, a community that embraced us, great public schools, and government help when we needed it. 10 years ago last night, my mother passed away at the age of 88. Medicare paid all of her bills, and then she was laid to rest at Arlington with military honors. The handsome young Marines that carried her to her final resting place caressed her casket with the flag before they folded it up and handed it to us and thanked us for her service on behalf of the nation. That was a promise made to a young woman in the Bronx in 1942, and the government honored it 66 years later, something no corporation ever would have done. Next month, I will award a scholarship in my mother's honor, as we have every year since she passed away, to a Garfield High School senior, the child of a single parent. Because of my own experiences, I have empathy for people who are in need, and I also understand the unique and important role that only the government can play in our lives. As a successful international businessman, I also understand what the Trump administration is doing to our economy and absolutely what's at stake, and why you should elect somebody like me to go to Washington this coming November. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Good evening. My name is Vanjie Williams, and I'm running for Congress in the 1st District of Virginia. I am the wife of a wonderful gentleman who happens to be a small business owner and a PBA bowler. 25 years of marriage have taught me communication can help you overcome anything. I have 3 of my daughters here, but I'm the mother, with my husband of course, of 6 daughters ranging in ages from 11 to 23. By profession, I'm a strategic planner. I solve problems for a living for our federal government as a contractor and once as a federal employee. Now let me tell you what a strategic planner does. The strategic planner does jobs like this. After Space Shuttle Columbia crashed over Texas, it was my job to get the NASA space flight program back in order. After 9/11, I was called in with a team of people to hire what you now know as the TSA. We hired 69,772 employees in 9 months, breaking a U.S. record for hiring the most federal employees in our nation's history. I can tell you something else. I am not just a one-issue woman. As a strategic planner, I see the strategic failures of our government. You know, the waste, fraud, and abuse is so dysfunctional that it hurts us. But on the other hand, that same hurt bleeds into our district, to our neighbors, to us. I'm not running to be just a political figure. I am running to be a public, you understand me, a public official to support us. My points are simple. Jobs and prosperity. You know, an economy that works for everyone. Now, when I speak about prosperity, I'm not talking about just money. I'm talking about housing, education, transportation, yes, retirement. I'm talking about health care. It's simple. We have to invest in our communities and definitely invest in our hometown heroes. You know, the enlisted military members, veterans, first responders, and educators. It's time we take care of home. Next, of course, is health care. I believe in single-payer health care, and I believe that all Americans can get health care easily when we all work together and we have someone who is strong and go to Capitol Hill to take care of it. And last but not least is government spending and fiscal responsibility. When you get your paycheck, you don't get to double it. We have a balanced budget in our household, and our government should have one too. My name is Vanjie Williams. Go to my website, VanjieForCongress.com, and let's make a change on Capitol Hill, because I'm not running as a liberal congresswoman. I'm not running as a conservative congresswoman. I am running to be the people's congresswoman. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. If you can't tell, I am excited to be here. I'm excited because the next time somebody asks me if we have a chance to flip this district blue in November, I'm going to point them back to tonight. We're on a random Friday in April in a district that hasn't had a primary in this millennium. We had a turnout like this, where so many people showed up who were interested, involved, and ready to get to work. And they saw the hard work that we put in, because the Blue Wave started right here in the Commonwealth in 2017. It spread throughout the country, and we can see that we're going to bring it home right here in November, because our district knows something to be true. Connor Lamb proved something in March, that a young Marine running in a conservative district as a proud Democrat can win. And I'm excited to talk to you about why a young Marine running as a proud progressive in a conservative district can win right here in Virginia's 1st Congressional District. Now, to me, being a progressive means that I want to solve the problems that our country are facing in ways that work for all Americans, because I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. That we should solve problems in ways that don't exclude people based off of who they love, what they look like, where they live, how much money they make, or the color of their skin. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Edwin Santana. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I am married to a Marine. My beautiful wife, Heather, is here right now. I am the lucky father of 2 crazy kids, Eddie and Valerie. I am a Puerto Rican. And I decided to run for Congress because I saw an appalling lack of moral and ethical leadership in government. I left the Marine Corps in September of 2016, and after the results of the election in November 2016, I realized it was time to get back to work. My eyes were opened in a way that I'd never experienced before, and I realized that they could never be shut again, that it was time to stand up and get back to work. And I wanted to take the leadership that I learned in the Marine Corps, the moral and ethical leadership, and bring that to government, because I look at some of our elected officials right now, and I see people who aren't there for the right reasons. Because when I raised my hand and took an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America to support and defend our country, I was doing so as a public servant. I was doing that for the public good. And I look at all levels of our government right now, and I don't see that. I see people who are there for selfish reasons. So I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to talk about the issues, whether that's instituting a single-payer healthcare system, improving our public education system, building a 21st century economy that works for all Americans in every single zip code, protecting the environment, expanding access to and improving quality of broadband internet, or doing something to address the culture of sexual violence that we have in this country. I am excited to be here and talk about those issues tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you all so much for being here. Please grab a beer, get comfortable, and I am excited to talk. Thank you so much for being here.
Now that we've had a chance to hear the opening statements from each candidate, we will move to individual questions. And the first question will be asked in the same order as the opening statements. Now that we've had a chance also to applaud the individual candidates for their opening statements, we'll also have a chance to applaud them for their closing statements. So please, if you will, hold your applause so we can maximize the amount of time to deal with the issues. Primaries, of course, are a key opportunity to distinguish among people who agree on a number of issues. And so the distinctions can be very important when you're talking about a primary. It's much clearer when a Democrat and a Republican are on the stage. When you have 3 Democrats or 3 Republicans, differences may not be so apparent. So the first question, and this goes first to candidate Sudarth, gun control. What is your thoughts about what should be done with respect to guns and safety in schools? 2 minutes.
Yeah, I've long been an advocate, actually since 1982, of an assault weapons ban. I have somewhat of a unique perspective on this because I know exactly what the 5.56 millimeter round does to the human body. It goes in like a ballpoint pen and it comes out like a Clorox jug. There is no reason why anybody should have that on the streets. So I am for an assault weapons ban, and I will tell you that this is not a constitutional question. We've already had an assault weapons ban, and it was sustained at the highest level of courts. What we don't have is the political courage to reinforce it, to re-implement it. So I am for an assault weapons ban. I am also for universal background checks, merging all the databases from mental, psychological, domestic abuse, so that we truly do have the capability of keeping people who should not have guns from buying guns. I'm also for the gun violence restraining order, which would protect for example, the domestic partner of someone who could hurt them with a weapon, that the weapon could be taken away, or the gun violence protective order, which would take away guns from people who might hurt themselves. I think that the idea of arming teachers, to me, is one of the craziest ideas I've ever heard. The idea of making the schools stronger, when we all know what the solution is. The solution is to get the weapons of war off the street, respect the Second Amendment for people who want to have a sporting weapon or a pistol, but we just need the political courage. And I am so strident and outspoken about this because when I do get elected, I want everyone to know that I have a mandate to go in there and vote for an assault weapons ban. Thank you.
Candidate Williams, 2 minutes, or 1 minute.
Common sense gun reform. Not one person in this room wants to be controlled. Not one person. I have a saying, if it takes you 30 bullets to shoot a deer, you need to go fishing. You know, this is not a hard thing to solve. First, I am definitely going to fight for a federal universal background checks. Just having them statewide is not good enough. Second, I want to have stricter state reciprocity rules because I live by the nice bridge. It takes less than 5 minutes to cross the border and come back over into Virginia with a gun. I want to stop that. I want to make sure that people understand this. We are not going to be able to ban the weapon, but what we can do is perhaps think outside the box. Oh, wait, let's think like Australia. How about instead doing a buyback program so that we can get the guns off the street and make sure they don't fall back in the hands of the wrong people? Common sense gun reform.
Candidate Santana, 1 minute.
So I carried these weapons overseas, and I know what they can do. As a Marine, I've carried just about every weapon imaginable, but I spent hundreds of hours earning the right and the ability to do so. And I'll tell you, if I wasn't qualified to use that weapon, I wouldn't be allowed to. If one day I was feeling something was wrong and I thought that I might be a harm to myself or my others, my commanding officer had the ability to take that weapon away so I couldn't hurt myself or someone else. Those are things that we can apply to the civilian population as well. So that way, a high schooler or a teenager can't take a weapon of war and go and use it on his classmates when they're having a bad day. Some things that I would support concrete. Universal background checks, that's easy. We have to close the gun show loophole so that way people can't buy weapons of war at gun shows without us knowing if they have the mental capacity to do so or if they have a criminal history. I would support an assault weapons ban. That one's easy for me. Again, I've carried those weapons overseas. They should not be carried on our streets. But I want to tell you one thing that does give me hope. We see a new generation of leaders and voters being raised right now who are going to vote and fight on this issue. They're going to vote and fight for congressmen and leaders who are not afraid to campaign on this issue, and that gives me hope. Thank you.
We'll go to the second question.
I have a working group on gun violence and the assault weapons ban, and what we have determined so far is we have to define an assault weapon by rapidity of fire, capacity, reload time, and the effects of the round on the human body. We want to come up with an airtight definition that the gun manufacturers cannot design around and truly implement a true ban on weapons of war.
To the second question, and this goes first to candidate Williams, who has 2 minutes, and the other candidates have 1 minute each. The first district, congressional district, has many miles of coastline. As the sea levels are expected to rise, what do you think should be done to prepare for the environmental impact on our district?
That's a great question, because I live by the water. You know, we look at things in a reactive manner. It's time that we as Americans, our Congress in particular, take action to be proactive. We have an Army Corps of Engineers. We need to listen to the experts instead of trying to figure out how to make the system work for us at extra costs. You know, I am very conservatively fiscal, and I strongly believe that we can solve this problem by figuring out why Whitman cut the budget for the Army Corps of Engineers. Dredging is very important down in the waterways where I live. That is something we have to change. We have to stop the lack of care by our representatives. When I get to Capitol Hill, one thing that I will protect is our waterways, which means it will be no offshore drilling. It will be no fracking, or as I like to put it, no fracking way. I'm sorry. Francis Edwards said that. I love him. This is time that we take positive, proactive measures to protect our environment. We've done enough damage by not listening and reacting to single item crisis. It's all part of a bigger system. We have to work it as a collective piece. We only have one world. We need to protect it.
Instead of passing a tax bill that would lead to a $1.5 trillion deficit in this country, Congress could have worked instead to pass an infrastructure bill that would have addressed this very specific issue. Because this is an infrastructure problem. We've waited too long to address the issues of climate change in this country, and we're starting to see the consequences now. So we could have spent infrastructure dollars to address this issue, and that's something that I would definitely vote for now. Infrastructure that can get people back to work, helping to solve this problem. But we also need to address climate change as a real issue in this country. And it's sad to me that there's only one political party, not one political party, but one of the major political parties sees this as a real issue, while the other party constantly fights against it as if it's not something that's happening. You can't bury your head in the sand on this issue and hope that it's going to get any better. We have to take steps to do something about it. And there are ways that we can do it. And I hope as we talk about economic issues in a little bit, we can address this. But we can be economically responsible while addressing the issues of climate change.
On a global level, we have to do everything possible to reduce our carbon footprint. The fact is that investment in infrastructure is action on climate change. As we become more efficient with more efficient energy grid, more mass transit, better highways, less time idling in traffic, we do address our carbon footprint. But I'm also for things like cap and trade and a revenue neutral carbon tax so that we reward people who do conserve and who do reduce their energy usage. We had the Paris climate agreement, and then Trump just callously and carelessly threw it away without even understanding what it did and why it was important for the U.S. and really for the whole world. On a local level, we need to work on better drainage. We need to protect the shorelines. We need to build higher roads. We do have roads in this district that are underwater. For example, the road out to Windmill Point whenever there is a storm surge. The military recognizes that Norfolk is under threat. But the Republican Congress and the Republican in the White House do not. So I take this very seriously. It's something that could produce good American jobs, at the same time addressing this issue, which will affect all of us if we don't.
You know, okay. This is the thing that we have to stop. We have to stop the us-them debate. We are the people of the United States of America. Our infrastructure plan won't just affect Democrats. It's going to affect Republicans. It's going to affect everyone in this country. One thing that I have promised along this campaign is that I will do an infrastructure study on the 1st District, on our waterways especially, and I and my co-signers, I call them the Incredible League of Incredible Candidates across the country, we are going to come up with a proactive plan to stop environmental damage. Thank you.
This question goes first to candidate Santana. What are your priorities for public education? What do you see as the best and most important things the federal government can do to support public education?
That is a great question. I think the first thing that we have to start doing is pay teachers in accordance with the responsibility that they have in this country. If you look, there are not too many other professions that have the responsibility of taking care of our kids for 8 to 10 hours a day. And sometimes a teacher is the only positive mentor or role model that a kid will have in our life. And we need to start paying teachers in accordance with that responsibility. Now, public education, I think that we need to invest in it like the national priority that it is. If you look at the difference between the budget for the Department of Defense and the Department of Education, $600 billion as opposed to $70 billion. And the Department of Defense's budget is only going up. You see where our national priorities lie in this country. And we're going to have a problem if we don't invest in the education of our children, because I believe that education is the great equalizer in this country. That somebody like me, who went to a K through 12 school in a very small town in Maine, a very rural and poor area, got a good education. That's why I'm up here on this table today. I think I was able to seize upon the opportunities that were presented in my life because of the educational opportunities that I had. So I think we need to pay teachers in accordance with that responsibility. We need to increase the funding for the Department of Education. We need to get people like Betsy DeVos out of there who don't know anything about teachers. They don't know anything about schools, and they need to be out of there. I think that Governor Ralph Northam did a great job here in Virginia by putting an educator in charge of the Department of Education in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We need to do that. We need to start putting educators in these roles, and we need to start listening to teachers because they have so much invested in this. Again, it is a great national responsibility that our teachers have, and we need to continue to invest in them.
First of all, I think there must be some educators in the room, because as I got out of my car, Dan Foss accosted me and asked me what my position was on vouchers and charter schools. And I told him all vouchers are is a way of taking something from those who have the least and giving it to those who already have the most. It's a subsidy to send the kids that are going to go to private school anyway to help pay for their private school at the expense of the kids that go to public school. I am for universal pre-K, for better pay, but I'm also for striking the proper balance between the core and standardized testing, and giving the teachers the autonomy they need to tailor the teaching to the individual needs of the student. My sister's sitting in the front row. She was an educator for 40 years in Prince William County, and she says, a pig doesn't get fatter if you weigh it every day. So I think we need to empower teachers. We need to trust teachers, and we need to do, this is the one gift, equality is enshrined in our Constitution. The one gift that we can truly give every child is a great education, because a great education leads to great opportunity. So.
Well, first, we need to fire DeVos, period. Second, no to charter schools. If you want to start a charter school, do it on your own budget, not under the federal budget. Now, I mentioned investing in our hometown heroes. One plan that I have is the INVEST initiative, and I have less than 30 seconds, so I'm going to hurry up. First of all, the INVEST initiative is simple. Invest in our teachers, our first responders, our enlisted military, and our veterans by exempting the first $50,000 of income from federal taxes. How do we do this? We close 2 or 3 of those tax loopholes that corporations are taking their money overseas, and we invest it back in our communities. And second, a balanced budget. A budget that makes sense. Yes, cutting the defense budget and putting on education is only the first step. We also need to raise the living wage. And we need to treat our teachers, especially our teachers right now, like rock stars. I have 6 daughters who have been through the education system, and 3 of them are still in it. Let me tell you, I understand education. I've been in it for a long time.
So real quick, my philosophy on education. I believe that we need to treat education like we do retirement. You invest early, you invest heavily, and you can see the results you'll have over the span of those children's lifetime.
The next question, and this goes first to candidate Siddharth. What will you do when you're in office to prevent rape and sexual assault? It's an audience question.
What I think we have to do is take this very, very seriously. We have to make it possible for people to raise this when it happens, to people who are going to listen and take it seriously. We have millions of rape kits that have not been tested. We have serial abusers who have not been arrested or who are not held to restraining orders. This is something where you might argue that the existing laws in place would work were they enforced. But all too often, we have men, mostly, who will look the other way or make excuses for criminal behavior. So I think we have to take women seriously. We have to listen, and we have to take action. This, to me, is so obvious that I'm surprised that it's taken us this long to actually get to the Me Too movement. We've had people that have been acting criminally for decades and have been getting away with it. And one of them might be in the White House. We have a situation where there is a legal dispute between a porn star and the President of the United States, and most people are rooting for the porn star. Now, it does give us a laugh, but what message is that sending to our young men and our young women? We need to have a higher standard here, and we need to adhere to it.
As a woman, I have to take this question very seriously, being the mother of 6 daughters. Rape is not just a woman's issue. It's not just it's an LGBT issue. It's a child issue. It's a human issue. We need to understand that the laws that are out there just aren't working. But we have to figure out what laws will work. For one, I know of a young lady who was raped, and she did not want to tell anyone because she was afraid she wasn't going to be believed. Even in the Me Too moment, she still does not want to talk to police. We need to educate our police forces. We need to educate our hospitals. And we do need to take care of those rape kits and get these guys off the street and throw away the key. I don't think a rapist should get out before someone who commits a white-collar crime. It's time we start prioritizing our people over money.
Our campaign takes this issue extremely important, and in November we added it as a major plank to our platform. One thing that really bothered me is I heard a statistic that said almost 50% of all women and almost 1 in 5 men will be a survivor of some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. And that is an appalling statistic. That's a statistic that reaches across socioeconomic lines, that reaches across party lines, and too often you don't have to look farther than your own home to find someone who's been a survivor of sexual violence. And we've actually developed legislation that we will put into place on our first day going into office that covers 3 main points. We would like to set affirmative consent as the standard across the country. So you don't put the onus on a victim of this violence. Yes means yes. We want to teach that at age-appropriate levels in school so that way children understand situations that may be dangerous and they know exactly what to do when that arises. And for me specifically, we need to take this issue out of the military chains of command because commanding officers do not have any incentive to report something that will make them look bad.
We're going to move on to the next question. This goes first to candidate Williams. There are many military families in the 1st Congressional District. What do you want to do to support our military veterans and their families, particularly regarding pay, benefits, housing, health care?
Interesting. I just answered that. The INVEST initiative is geared towards enlisted military and veterans. 35% of our enlisted military persons in our district are on food stamps. That's a national shame. Our veterans are living below the poverty line. They're not homeless any longer, but they still can't afford to go out and buy a meal without figuring out how much money they truly have. I am very encouraged that we have a blue tsunami coming because I know when I get up on Capitol Hill, yes, I'm claiming it, that I will have co-signers on an initiative that serves people, our hometown heroes, our national heroes. I also believe that if you're a veteran and you have served in a war, you deserve a break today. It's time we focus on our people and not corporations, because right now the corporations are leading how our Congress is making decisions. People before profit. Our military deserves the best. Thank you.
So I understand what it's like. I served on active duty. I am married to an active duty Marine. I understand what it's like to be a veteran. My brother at 24 years old is a disabled veteran. I understand a lot of the issues that military families in this district will have to face. And I can bring that perspective to Congress. One thing that's important, I worked through the last government shutdown that we had in 2013, excuse me. I worked through that government shutdown. I knew what it was like to have to go to work as essential personnel and continue to work not knowing if you were going to get paid. I had to look at junior Marines and figure out how we were going to pay their families, how we were going to make sure that they put food on the table. And I can bring that knowledge with me to government. One thing, Rob Whitman always likes to advocate on how strongly he works for veteran families, and that's just not true. It's not true. The federal government has shut down twice since Rob Whitman has been in office. They haven't passed a budget since 2009, and that leads to instability that affects our military families. They don't get adequate pay raises, and like Vanjie just pointed out, too many of our young soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen do not get adequate pay and live on food stamps.
The different policies that I am passionately advocating would help all military families and all veterans. One of these is single payer, which would provide every American, every resident with outstanding health care at his or her location, so they would not have to go to military hospitals if they're active or veterans hospitals if they are veterans. Once we have single payer, everyone will have access to affordable health care and will have better outcomes, and will also save about $1.5 trillion a year. That will enable the military hospitals and the veterans hospitals to focus on unique illnesses and syndromes to veterans in the military. So the veterans hospitals would not be trying to provide general care at the same time they're trying to focus on wounds or psychological disorders. I'm also a very strong advocate of a $15 minimum wage so that anybody who works 40 hours a week can live on that, so people aren't trying to work 2 or 3 jobs. That will lift the lives of veterans just as it will all Americans. And anybody who tells you that we can't afford it does not understand economics. A higher minimum wage will drive productivity and help our economy for everybody.
I want to tell you all something. I thought about this. Do you know that Rob Whitman does not care about the military? We all know this. He cares about one thing: military contractors. You know, one thing that I am really strong, and I believe these two are as well, is reversing Citizens United. When we get the money out of government and take the contractor, take that ability to just control someone, we get control back of our government as citizens. So reverse Citizens United. Say it.
Reverse Citizens United.
The next question goes first to candidate Santana. How do you think federal dollars should be spent most effectively to combat the opioid epidemic?
That is a great question. I can tell you the wrong direction the country's moving in right now. President Trump wants to combat the opioid epidemic by killing drug dealers. You can't help solve a problem by killing people. I can tell you that right now, and I was a United States Marine. But John touched upon it earlier, and this is something that I advocate heavily for in every single forum, in any place I get the chance, and that's a single-payer healthcare system. We need to treat the opioid epidemic like a healthcare crisis that it is. And when our country moves to a single-payer healthcare system, that will allow every man, woman, or child, whether they have a job or not, no matter their age or what they look like or where they live, to go and get the adequate healthcare that we need. You can see right now in a lot of states, Medicaid is the way that a lot of these individuals get the healthcare that they need, and we're fighting right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia to expand Medicaid. It shouldn't be a state-by-state issue on whether or not people can get the healthcare that they need. You shouldn't have to be lucky enough to be born in a state that cares about your healthcare and wants to treat a disease that you might have, because addiction is a disease. So I think moving to a single-payer healthcare system is not only the morally right thing to do, because I believe it is the morally right thing to do. I believe healthcare is a human right. But like John said earlier, it is the fiscally responsible thing to do as well. The highest estimates for what a single-payer healthcare system will cost is $2.8 trillion. Right now, Americans spend $3.4 trillion every single year in a system that leaves millions of Americans underinsured, millions of Americans uninsured, and it puts the bottom lines of health insurance companies, their profit line, ahead of positive health outcomes for Americans. We need to start treating this like the health emergency that it is. I think switching to a single-payer healthcare system can do that. In the interim, states need to pass Medicaid expansion. We need to do it here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I will be a voice for that. All 50 states need to do that.
Again, all of my positions work in concert. We have a problem with pharmaceutical companies spending $100 million to lobby and getting a $300 billion benefit in pricing to the U.S. government. We have a small town in West Virginia with 1,000 residents selling hundreds of millions of opioid pills. We have a pharmaceutical industry that lied about the addiction. You know, when I was young, someone said, invest in tobacco companies because it costs 10 cents to make, you can sell it for $1 and it's addictive. And that's what the pharmaceutical industry did with pills. So we need to treat it as an illness, not as a crime, and we need to have single payer so we can treat these people, and we need to take the profit motive out of the provision of health care so we don't have companies and doctors prescribing things that we don't need and performing procedures that we don't want just so that they can make more money.
Experience teaches us. You know, a lot of you may not know, some of you may know, but I am the child of a woman who was addicted to drugs. And my experience is as follows. Until we get our hands around, of course, pain management and mental health, we're always going to have this problem. But another problem we have is we have too many people on Capitol Hill taking too much money from pharmaceutical companies. I vow I will never take a penny from a pharmaceutical company nor a health insurance company. Unlike the gentleman up in Pennsylvania who is called the senator of United Health, who took over $1 million from healthcare companies, specifically United Health. My experience teaches us this. We need to start looking at how we solve the problem, because this is only a part of a problem. You also still have a crack epidemic and a heroin epidemic and a methamphetamine epidemic. We have big problems in this country. Focusing on just one is just not enough. We need to do it collectively so we save lives.
So another thing that we absolutely have to stand against, we cannot have another war on drugs in this country. That is a war that we absolutely lost. And all it led to was higher incarceration rates for men and women of color. It was a failed war. And when you look at the direction the country is going in right now, it scares me, and we need new leaders up there. When you have Jeff Sessions reauthorizing United States attorneys to prosecute in states where marijuana has been legalized, we're going in the wrong direction. That was a failed war. We cannot lose it again.
This question goes first to candidate Siddharth. What should the American policy be with respect to immigration?
The people who are against immigration reform and work so hard to stop it from happening are the same people who use illegal labor in order to suppress wages and to exploit people. They will say all kinds of things about us as Democrats, that we're for open borders. No, we're not. That we're for letting illegal people do what they want. No, we don't. What I want are secure borders. What I want is E-Verify, so that any worker who does work is designated to be a legal worker. This has been around for 20 years. I was in manufacturing for 25 years, and I always used it. I always knew that my workers were legal and documented, but a lot of companies don't want that because they can use that illegal labor to suppress the wages of ordinary Americans. That said, I do believe that we should have a seasonal immigration visa so that people can come in and do work that we can't get done, to harvest our crops and to do other things. And we should have a way of bringing in talent as H-1B. My grandparents were immigrants. My wife is an immigrant. We can't be against immigrants. We are a country of immigrants, but we need to figure out a way to do it so that people can come here legally, work legally, we can get advantage of that, but not use illegal immigration to suppress the working person. I think the comprehensive immigration plan that the Gang of Eight came up with was a good plan. It could not even get to the floor in the House. We know what the answer is, we just have need to have the political courage to implement it.
I agree. The Gang of Eight had a great policy. They had a great bill. And I hope that when we get up to Capitol Hill in January, that we can solidify that bill. Bring it back up and make it pass, because of course we're going to have a blue Congress then. We need a solid path to citizenship for hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying persons who want to be citizens. And we definitely, 100%, and I'm hoping that it's done before we get to Congress, is to definitely give permanent citizenship to the dreamers. I know several on my volunteer staff, and let me tell you, those are the hardest working young people I've ever met. And they're fearful not only of the laws that are coming out and the lack of caring, but they're fearful that we're all going to forget that they're there. So common sense tells us that we got to protect our immigrants, because those who want to be here are here for the right reasons.
So if we're talking DACA specifically, I think Democrats should have stood up and fought on this issue. We shut the government down, and I think we did the right thing, and I think that we absolutely caved by opening it up on a Monday. A weekend shutdown was not enough to get the point across. And I think, again, Democrats need to get caught trying on this issue. Stand up and fight for it. Everyone believes that these young Americans should be in this country. They are brought here through no fault of their own. The Dreamer program, DACA, it's a workers permit program. It helps these individuals be in here legally working. They do not commit crimes. And it is a fact that first-generation immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than Native Americans who live here now. And they can, second-generation commit crimes at higher rates because they become more American. That's what the issue is. They become assimilated to our culture because we have a culture of violence in this country. No Democrat wants open borders. I know that. That's a false narrative. I would support stronger enforcement at the borders, but I will not support expanding the mission of ICE, which has done nothing but terrorize communities of color all throughout this country.
Yeah, I would like to clarify something that Edwin said. What the Democrats are not to blame for this DACA situation. What the Democrats did is they shut down the government for 2 days and they opened it up by giving 9 million children health care for 6 years. The person to blame for DACA is Donald Trump, not any Democrat.
This is an audience question, and it goes first to candidate Williams. What can you do to help the LGBTQ community be more equal and less of a target in today's political environment?
Very good question. I am the mother of a child who is binary. And speaking with her and speaking with so many of her friends who are transgender, I have learned so much by simple conversation. First, equal protection for all Americans. It does not matter who you love, how you look, what color you are. It should be equal protections for everyone. Not one time have I ever had someone over my house and I questioned who they were when they told me their names. When you look at it, the Gay Straight Alliance said it perfectly. Protect those who can't protect themselves. And I will protect them by helping and co-signing on laws that are geared to stricter punishments for people who target specifically the LGBT community. It's just like the civil rights movement. A lot of people don't agree with that, but until you understand that a person is a human being and bleeds the same way you do not have the right to decide who lives, how they live, who they love, and what they do. Plus, we need equal pay, just like for women, equal pay for LGBT communities. A lot of these young people are taking jobs that are subpar because they are afraid to go out into the main world and go for it. We're going to change that. I love people. I see them as they are, and I hope that everyone in this room and when we get to Capitol Hill, we can start making that a permanent fact.
Discrimination of the LGBTQ community is just a new way to discriminate in this country. Now, we used to openly discriminate people based off the color of their skin, and we've deemed that inappropriate now. And now we've moved to discriminating against people based off of who they love or how they view themselves. And that is just absolutely unacceptable in this country in 2018. And I'll say one thing. While I'm not personally a member of the LGBTQ community, whenever I am in a position to make decisions regarding that community, I will have people there who will have a voice. I'm not going to make decisions on this issue in isolation. I want people there who can have a voice on that issue. I want to harken back to the healthcare debate when they were discussing women's rights and women's reproductive rights. You remember the picture of 20 old white men in a room talking about women's reproductive issues? We cannot have that happen right now when we're talking about LGBTQ issues. They need to have a voice in this, and I can commit to making sure that they have a voice on my staff and any time that I'm in a position to make decisions on this issue.
I went to West Point West Point, some people think, is a premier leadership school. At West Point, I learned that you can change people's behavior by changing their hearts and minds. I also learned that you can change people's hearts and minds by changing their behavior. Now, I was at West Point when women were first being introduced, and they met a lot of male hostility. And whenever any male cadet would show hostility or treat a woman unfairly because she was a woman, the administration came down on him like a ton of bricks. They had this thing called the area that you had to march back and forth if you had done something severely wrong. And someone who had castigated a woman, a female cadet, was granted 100 hours of marching back and forth on the area. So the hearts and minds were changed by changing the behavior. People were afraid not to treat women with respect. Once they were treated with respect, they were able to prove that they were equals. The same thing had happened in the military 30 years before with African Americans. We need to come down on people who abuse people in the LGBT community like a ton of bricks. We need to change the hearts and minds by changing the behavior and punishing it when it's inappropriate.
We'll move to the next question. This goes first to candidate Santana. What is the biggest foreign policy threat that the U.S. faces today, and why?
That is a great question. It's one that we've known for a while now, and I think that it is the Russian government meddling in our elections. We haven't done anything since the Russian government meddled in our elections in 2016. We're in 2018 right now. Primaries have already started in states across this country, and we have not found out ways to protect our elections here. Now, you can go online and look at YouTube videos and see all these videos of how easy it is to hack into voting machines, to change votes, to change voters' addresses, so that way when you go up and you try and show your ID and the address that you have on your license doesn't match what's in the system, you don't get to vote that day. It is so easy to do, and we have not done anything about it because we have a president who's made it a partisan issue. He is so afraid of what he's done in his past that he is willing to put the stake of free and fair elections in this country. He is willing to throw that all away so he doesn't get in trouble, and that is absolutely shameful to me. So I view that as the greatest threat that faces our country right now. North Korea, they've been crazy for a very long time. I think President Barack Obama did a good job in dealing with them. We need to continue to address that threat. The same thing with the Iran nuclear deal. We were making positive steps here. We're only going backwards, like so many other things where we're going backwards under President Donald Trump. Again, I believe that foreign adversaries meddling in our elections is the biggest threat that we face. And what has Donald Trump done to address that right now? He invites Putin to the White House for lunch after congratulating him on winning his phony election just last month. So that shows you where his priorities lie. Thankfully, we still have some work going on in the Senate Judiciary or the Senate Intel Committee, and I hope that they continue that work. But my God, I hope this is a problem that is solved before one of the three of us up here is sworn into office in January of next year. This is something that we need to address right now.
The biggest threat we have from foreign policy is too much money in politics. In one of his last statements, Dwight Eisenhower, the man who won World War II in Europe, warned us about the military-industrial complex and how they would influence politicians in order to spend money that we don't need to spend on defense. We have 300,000 troops in 153 different countries. We are still investing too much in planes, ships, tanks, armored vehicles, weapons, when we know that the real threats are things like the cyber threat from Russia. We even have a bigger economic cyber threat from China. Our president is completely ignoring this. Our congressman, his top 15 contributors are all defense contractors. We ought to and 70% of our top diplomatic slots are empty. So we need to beat our plowshares into our swords into plowshares, diplomats, schools, health clinics, textbooks, and we ought to invest in diplomacy, not in more defense.
The biggest threat is definitely Russia. We need to invest in definitely cybersecurity. We need to invest in our FBI, our CIA, our policing force that is there to protect our country. We have to make sure that Mueller does his job to the end. But see, our president hasn't figured out yet that if it isn't about him, then leave it alone and let the investigation go so we can find out who really is behind it. And yes, again, Citizens United. If we reverse Citizens United, there will not be a way for them to hide how they funnel money into the wrong hands of this government. Secondly, there is a second, and that is the trade war. In this district alone, we are going to be hit hard. Farmers are going to lose their livelihoods. And that is a scary notion when most of these farmers are already suffering economically. So there are two. There are a lot more, but it's not enough time.
So to go along those same lines, things that are affecting our democracy, another thing I think, while not foreign policy is just as important as gerrymandering. It's something that we face in this country. When politicians have the ability to select their constituents and not the other way around, that leads to a problem. So when you have politicians only worried about their self-interest, and you have a foreign government that's working to benefit one party over another, those are things that can really affect our democracy. So again, gerrymandering and foreign adversaries meddling in our elections, I think, are the two biggest issues that we face.
We're going to have one more round of questions. That is one question for each of you to go first. So 3 more questions, and then we'll go to closing statements. The next question goes first to candidate Sudharth. This is another audience question. The 1st Congressional District has been designed through gerrymandering to give Republicans an advantage. What is your message to attract voters who are independents or independent-leaning Republicans?
You know, we have 40% of the people in our district who are progressives. They don't always vote. You know, a big part of our progressive party are people who work 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs, so they can't vote as easily as a manager can. But if we give them a good reason to vote, they will come out. Single payer is a good reason to vote. Action on gun violence and education and climate change are good reasons to vote. There's also the 40% on the other side who are not ever going to vote for any of us up here. They're always going to vote for Republicans. But there are 20% in the middle who just want the system to work. They look at hiring a congressman the same way somebody may look at hiring somebody to do their lawn. They want to hire them, they want the lawn to be cut, they want the weeds to be weeded, and they don't want to have to breathe down their neck and go to rallies and do all these things that we all do in order to try to change things in Washington. My plan is to appeal to that 20% in the middle by explaining why all of these progressive policies that I'm advocating actually make me a true fiscal conservative. If you did not know me, but you saw me walking across the parking lot, and you saw my resume of a Stanford MBA, a West Point, a U.S. Army officer, having run 6 different multinational manufacturing companies with operations in 15 different countries and revenues of $700 million, you would say, oh, there goes a nice Republican man. But I'm not, because Republican politics, Republican economics don't work. Single payer, infrastructure investment, a higher minimum wage, action on gun violence and investment in education will make our economy stronger. It will reduce federal spending. It'll make us more productive, and it'll lower taxes. Because I would not be beholden to all the people like the NRA, the defense contractors, the fossil fuel industry, and Dominion that give money to Rob Whitman. Now, to be honest, none of those people offered me any money either, which is why I'm counting on you to contribute to my campaign. But I can win because I am the true fiscal conservative, not Rob Whitman.
I am an independent-minded Democrat with progressive values who is fiscally conservative. And for those of you who don't know how I operate, I talk with, speak with, shake hands with, hug everyone up and down this district. For a while, people were calling me the Tea Party Whisperer. And at first it was kind of funny, but it got kind of scary when I realized that they had guns. I can tell you this. We have to stop the us-them conversation. When I go in, I'm speaking with someone, I am not looking at them as someone who is red or somebody who is blue. Because the last time I checked, as an American, we are all representing the red, white, and blue. And that's how I'm going up and down this district. Yes, I have my progressive values, but guess what? I am more fiscally conservative than, sorry guys, either one of these gentlemen and Rob Whitman and majority of the Congress that is sitting up on Capitol Hill right now. I am dealing with this every day of my career because that is my job. That is my experience level. And that's what I'm taking to Capitol Hill.
So like I said in the opening statement, I am a proud progressive, and I don't care who knows. It's something that I advocate for a few reasons. One, progressive ideas are very popular. When you ask people if they want Medicare for all, that is a very popular thing in this country. Improved access and quality of broadband internet. Nobody likes slow internet. That is a nonpartisan issue that people can get behind in this country. But on a more serious note, I think that I'm also a different candidate than this district has had before. As a Marine, I've been able to have conversation with folks that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Because when I tell people, my name is Edwin Santana, I'm a former Marine running for Congress, then I tell them I'm a Democrat. We have conversations that we might not have had otherwise. Normally the next question is, why are you a Democrat? And then I'm very proud to tell them why I am so. But as a Marine, I worked with very diverse groups of men and women from all different parts of this country. People know that I can get the job done because it's something that I had to do every single day when I was in the military. I didn't care where people were from or what their political views were. We had to get very difficult and complex tasks accomplished, and I know that I can do that in Congress as well.
Next question goes first to candidate Williams. What needs to be done to protect Social Security benefits for today's seniors and to maintain and strengthen the system for future generations?
It's so up my alley. First of all, Social Security is protected. Social Security is not going anywhere. Don't let that threat scare you. But I can tell you what we do need to do. We need to stop allowing Capitol Hill to borrow money from Social Security, because we're going to be paying in it for the rest of our lives, and I hope that everyone understands that we all will have our share of it. But I want to give you all a reality check. You know, I live in King George. I live in the Northern Neck. Very, very, very red area. And I have conversations with Republicans, and I ask them, why did you vote one way or the other? And I've spoken to Democrats who voted the other way this time. And the reality check is this. They didn't care what party it was. They thought about what the person was going to do for them once they got up in D.C. or in Capitol Hill. One reality check is this. The ACA, they voted against the ACA, not against Hillary Clinton. And that was a scary notion. For one, think about this. This is a lesson that I had to learn the hard way. If you have insurance in the Northern Neck or Middle Peninsula or anywhere where you don't have transportation, you have insurance and no access to health care. So getting rid of the individual mandate was a priority for them. So now that is gone, we now can understand why they were so happy. Now they're not happy. What they're afraid of now is this. It's like having car insurance with no car. They want to know what we're going to do up on Capitol Hill that is a realistic goal. We have so many. And as freshmen congressmen and women, we will only be allowed one or two bills when we first get there. We will have to co-sign on other bills. Social Security is not going to be one. I can tell you what will be: the budget, education, transportation, infrastructure, you name it, we will have it. So that's what we're going to focus on.
So as a progressive, I support a livable wage because I think that any man or woman that works full-time should be able to live and support their family with dignity. As a progressive, I also believe that we should fight for Social Security, because any man or woman that spends their entire life working to support themselves and their family should be able to retire and live with dignity as well. This is something that Americans spend their entire lives paying into. It's something that, again, you can see how strong a country is based off of how well they support those who are needed. Again, you stand up, you work your whole life, you should be able to live and retire in dignity as well. Some things we can specifically do for Social Security: remove the cap on income, on what's taxed. Again, I don't have the ability to only have the first portion of my income taxed, and neither should a billionaire. All income should be taxed at the same level. Again, whether you're making $50,000 or $50 million, it should be taxed. Because again, Bill Gates gets the same Social Security that I will when I'm eligible for it. And like Vanjie said, again, don't allow that money to be spent on anything other than ensuring retirement for people who have paid into the system.
First of all, Social Security and Medicare have never, ever run a deficit, and they will not until 2042. They have been paying for the deficits caused by the tax cuts the Republicans have been giving for the last 40 years with their surpluses. Now, these guys just enacted a $1.5 trillion tax cut weighted toward the wealthy. If you earn $1 million a year, you get a $200,000 a year permanent tax cut. If you earn $75,000 a year, you get an $1,100 tax cut that's disappearing over 4 years. The budget that was just released last Friday will add another $360 billion to a $1.5 trillion deficit that is really already 2.2 because their assumptions never come true. So the real threat to Social Security is the Republicans have created a huge deficit, which will lead to a recession, and then this crisis that they are creating, they will use as an amble to try to pound out cuts to Medicaid, to Medicare, and to Social Security, but we will not let them do it.
You know, early on when I started running for Congress, someone wisely told me, if you work hard and you play by the rules, the system shouldn't be rigged against you. This is the time that we stop again with the labels and start focusing on people and not corporations. It's time we start closing these tax loopholes and focusing our attention back on the people who need the help the most. And I believe, wait a minute, that's all of us. It doesn't matter who you are as a human being. I believe that we all should have a fair tax system, a level of tax that is affordable for all, and that corporations should have a minimum tax period. They should not have any tax loopholes that are a burden to our country. They are not human beings. We are.
The last question goes first to candidate Santana. If you turn out not to be the party nominee, will you pledge your full support behind whoever the nominee is?
Absolutely. That's an easy question. And I'm so excited again that we do have a primary. Like I said, for the first time, at least in this millennium, we have 3 candidates up on a stage giving you their best argument on why they think they are the ones who can beat Rob Whitman come November. I'm excited for this privilege and the opportunity to do so. And I hope, again, I know who I'm voting for. I mean, I hope I've made a good case for myself as well. But again, this is a wonderful opportunity to be up here and make that case. And I think it's great for the district. Whoever comes out of this, I think this is our 10th, 11th, 12th debate that we've had already. Whoever's going to come out of this district will have had almost as many debates as Rob Whitman has had in the 10 years that he's been in Congress. And will be more prepared than any candidate we've sent to face him since he's taken office in 2007. I hope that candidate's me. I will continue to fight for whoever the candidate is on June 13th.
First of all, I will absolutely support the nominee, regardless of who she is. And I want to say that the 3 of us and also Ryan Sawyer and Tom Hicks have conducted ourselves, with mutual respect and dignity, and I think we have modeled good civic behavior. Compare us, the way we treat each other, with the Republican presidential primary that we saw a couple years ago? And which type of behavior would you like foreigners to see, or would you like your children to see? So I would just like to thank Edwin, Tom, Ryan, and Manfred for the way that they conducted themselves for this campaign.
Absolutely, I would support whoever the nominee is. Well, I hope it's me, but just in case, I would definitely do that. This is what democracy looks like. You gotta give yourselves a hand for coming out tonight, because this is truly what democracy looks like. And I hope that you vote for whoever you're gonna vote for in the primary based on priorities, not just if they're female or male or what have you, but based on priorities, and that they're going to not be basing their wanting to run on a single issue. Right now, our country is in a strategic failure, so please, please listen, learn, and pass the word, because we're going to need that come November as well. Sharing is caring. Hate to say it that way, but it's true. You got to care. Enough prayers. Thank you.
In a moment, we'll turn to the final statements from the candidates, the closing remarks. But before we do that, I want to take a moment once again to thank the organizers and our hosts today at Old Busthead. Thanks to Indivisible, Nova West. Thanks to the League of Women Voters who helped with the questions. There's information for you if you haven't registered here on the side on your way out. So thanks to everyone who made this event possible. Thanks also to all of you. Sometimes when the discourse in America gets a bit degraded, we hope for the best but worry about what might happen. And this is one of these times where we can really compliment the candidates for their professionalism and the audience as well. Thank you all for that. And now we turn to closing statements from the candidates. Each candidate has 2 minutes, and we're now going to remove that no applause rule for the chance for all of you to compliment the candidates as they give you your the closing statements. They're in the reverse order, so candidate Santana goes first.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much. This has been quite an experience. So like I said, when we started off, I was very excited. I stayed excited this entire time, and I hope you did too. I know the no applause rule is kind of lame, but I mean, I stayed excited the entire time. And when I do, I start talking really, really fast, and I hope you all were able to understand what I was talking about. But again, I want to reiterate a few of the issues. I've touched upon it all night, but why I think our campaign has the best chance to win come November. I think as a young, proud progressive, again, I am proud of that label. And again, I think the issues that we stand up and fight for are very popular. And I think I can bring a new generation of leadership to government. The generation that we have, whether it's Rob Whitman, Donald Trump, or a lot of men and women in between, are not cutting it right now. And I think I can bring that new perspective to government. Like I said, as a veteran, I worked every single day with men and women who were very diverse from different parts of the country, and I worked with them to accomplish very difficult and very hard tasks. I didn't care where they came from. I didn't care who they voted for. We just worked together to get the job done. And that's the task that the next congressman or congresswoman from this district is going to have to do. And again, to enact the progressive agenda that we have, it's going to take people who can work together, and I think that I can do so. Another thing that I think is important is that I think I can represent working families, because that's my reality every single day. My wife and I both get up and go to work every single day. I still work full-time throughout this campaign because I have to. If I don't work, there's no dinner on the table at home for my family. And I think when you look at our current Congress, you look at Rob Whitman, his net worth has increased 17 times since he's been in office. He is so far removed from the people that he is trying to represent that's why he's not an effective representative right now. And I think that I can bring a better perspective to Congress. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here tonight. This was awesome. My name is Edwin Santana. Please, I need your support in this campaign. If you go to our website, santanaforcongress.com, you can find a way to support that works for you. Whether that's knocking on doors, making phone calls, hosting a meet and greet, or making a donation, find the way that works for you and just get involved. And if it's not for me, again, I'll say, just get involved. The more people that are involved in this process, the better we'll be come June 13th. Thank you all so much again. This has been a great night.
For coming out tonight. Now let me explain this. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not running to be the liberal congresswoman. I'm not running to be the conservative congresswoman. I'm running to be the people's congresswoman. You cannot believe how many conversations you have to have on the campaign trail. But I can tell you some of the ones that I have had has taught me that having a title or a label on yourself can restrict the ones from voting for you. And it can also encourage the ones who should be standing up for democracy and what have you against you. I am a black woman running in a red district. I am a 50-year-old experienced full-time worker who has been serving our government consistently since I was 19 years old. I have worked for the Commandant of the Marine Corps. I have literally been thrown on the ground in unarmed combat course as a non-Marine to learn some respect for Marine Corps. I can tell you this, my experience spans all levels of government. I have worked with congressmen and women. I have worked often as the only woman and only person of color in the room. I understand how life truly works. Let me explain something. Not only am I a full-time mother with 6 daughters, one who has Asperger's, another who has a mental condition that requires full-time care, but I am also a full-time employee at SAIC, serving, I'm actually working 14 different contracts right now, and I'm a full-time student. I'm in a doctorate program getting my doctorate degree to make myself better for the people. I'm not going to get up here and tell you that I am not the best candidate, because I am the best candidate. I'm experienced, I'm qualified, I'm innovative, and guess what? I'm a woman, and women are out to rule this year because we have seen that the status quo on Capitol Hill is still restricting us. It's time we stand up for what women need and not for, for men to continuously tell us how to be, how to act, how to live, what we deserve. I know I have worked my way up the ranks, but I need your support. Dollars. Campaigns cost a lot of money. Support. Volunteers. We have a canvassing activity tomorrow. We have fundraisers. By all means, get out and help. And definitely, talk to me. Tell me what your concerns are, because this is not my campaign. This is our campaign. Thank you.
I would like to echo what Banji said. Dollars. You can contribute to our campaign at this table over here tonight as soon as I am done talking. I'm a West Pointer. I was an artillery officer. I was stationed in Germany. Then I commanded a firing battery in the Rapid Deployment Force. What I did not tell you is that I was also Ranger qualified. U.S. Army Ranger School is the toughest school in the U.S. military. Only 1% of all soldiers volunteer to go to Ranger School, and of that 1%, only 1/3 graduate. And I was one of those people. But the important point is not that I graduated, it's that I volunteered to begin with, to go to the toughest school. When I was a corporate executive, I ran 6 different multinational manufacturing companies successively. Every single one was a turnaround on the verge of bankruptcy when I took it over. When I volunteered to go to Habitat for Humanity and be the chairman, that was on the verge of bankruptcy. The point is, I have been in tough situation after tough situation, time after time, and I have succeeded where others have failed. Now, we talk about the nomination, we talk about who can mobilize the base, who can appeal to the people in the middle, who can beat Rob Whitman. But what we haven't talked about is who can actually go to Washington, be in Congress, and reach out and deal with the difficult people on the other side, earn their trust and their respect, and be tenacious and stand up for our principles, our policies, and our programs, but still get something done. It doesn't do us any good if we take over and we're just as stubborn and obstinate as they have been. We need people who know how to work in tough situations with difficult people to move this country forward. We don't have any more time. The wheels are coming off the bus. So please support my campaign. I ask you for your vote. Thank you for coming out tonight. My campaign website is sudarthforcongress.com. And again, let's talk after this event. You've been a great audience, and I appreciate you coming out on a Friday night. Some final thoughts?
You guys, just have a couple of announcements first. There's another debate. It's for the CD10. It's happening. It's Indivisible Nova West, the Gainesville Dems, the Manassas and Manassas Park Dems are putting it on this Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. at Battlefield High School at Haymarket.